Okay, grab those vocab books. Let's get started on Unit 8, Video 1. Okay, we only have one vocab word today, and it's 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, so that type of triangle, it's a special triangle. It's a special right triangle since it has a 90-degree angle. 90-degree angle. So a special right triangle that has two 45-degree angles. So take a look at this triangle over here. We have the 90-degree angle and two 45-degree angles. And together that will make 180 degrees. So when you have a triangle that's a 45, 45, 90 triangle, certain characteristics apply to all of these triangles. Okay, well, it turns out that if these two angles are both 45 degrees, then the sides opposite those angles, this side and this side, which we call legs, these two sides are the same length, which is why you see these marks here. So because they're the same length, we're going to title them with the same letter. So we're going to use the letter N. So they would both be the letter N. They're both the same length, so they both have the same value. We'll call it N. This length, the hypotenuse, is not equal to these two because remember, the hypotenuse is always the longest side, so it has to be longer than these two sides. So we call that one, we're going to label it N times the square root of 2. So that is our 45, 45, 90 template. So that's going to help us find missing sides of our right triangle. So we don't have to use the Pythagorean theorem because sometimes we'll just have one side of our triangle and we can't do Pythagorean theorem with only one side. So it turns out if it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle, then we only have to have one side. Okay, if all that's kind of confusing for you, maybe it'll make more sense when we actually do some problems. So let's get started. Okay, take a look at problem 1. We have to solve for x. So we have this 45, 45, 90 triangle, and we are missing the hypotenuse. So we need to find x. So let's go ahead and put a spot over here for our answer. X equals. Okay, now remember that template that you just wrote in your vocab section? Well, that's going to come into play right now. So remember the two legs are N. So on the two leg side, I'm going to put N and N. And remember on the hypotenuse, it was N root 2. So the easiest way to do this problem is to say that N then would equal 5. And X would equal N root 2. And over here, we know that these two sides are congruent. So we know over here that this side is also 5. Okay, so what you do is you look for your variable that you're trying to find. We're trying to find x. And now we have something to work with. So we're going to write our equation off to the side. So x equals N root 2. Well, we're trying to solve for x, so we need to know one more piece of information. We need to know what is n. What is n? Well, if we look down here, n is 5. So using our template, we know what needs to go right here because this n is 5. And we're talking about the same n that's here. So we would just write that x equals 5 root 2. So an easy way to remember this is it's n root 2. So if this side is 5 and this side is 5, then this side would be 5 root 2. If this side is 10, 10, this side would be 10 root 2. So our answer is 5 root 2. That's the length of our hypotenuse. Let's try another one. Okay, problem 2. Once again, we're solving for x. So this time we're looking for the length of the legs. Okay, so let's go ahead and put a spot for our answer. X equals. Okay, remember our template. Let's go ahead and write that in. So remember the legs are n, and the hypotenuse is n root 2. Okay, so we're trying to find x, so we're going to put our equation over here. So I'm looking for this right here. So I'm going to write my equation off to the side. X equals n. So if I look back at my problem, back at my triangle, can we figure out what n is? Because if I know what n is, then I'll be done. So this doesn't really help me. Can't really do anything with this. So looking at these two, can you figure out what n would equal? Are you thinking 3? So if you look at this right here, if 3 root 2 equals n root 2, then what would n have to be for these two to be equal? Hopefully you're thinking that n would have to equal 3. Because if we put a 3 right here for n, 3 root 2 equals 3 root 2. So n has to be 3. So now we can come back up here and solve for x. Not really much solving we have to do. We know that x would equal whatever n is, which we know is 3. So x would equal 3. Now remember our template. These two are the same length, and this one is that length times root 2. So we said that x equals 3. So this is 3, this is 3, and this is 3 root 2. 3 root 2. So 3, 3, 3 root 2. Hopefully it's getting a little bit easier for you. Let's try one more. Okay, last problem. Now, once again, we're trying to find the hypotenuse. We're given the length of one of the legs, which we know is the same length as this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and write in our template. So we know that this is n, and n root 2. Okay, so what we're going to be solving for is x. So let me go ahead and put a spot for my answer over here. X equals. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and write the equation off to the side. X equals n root 2. Well, let's look back over here. I know what n equals. N equals 5 root 2 over 2. So how about I just take that and fill it in right here and see what happens. Okay, so I know that x is going to be whatever n is, which is 5 root 2 over 2. And I multiply that by root 2. So here's n, and here's the root 2. So now we just have to figure out how do you multiply root 2 times root 2. Okay, so you just multiply the two radicals together. So the 5 stays. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4 over our 2 at the bottom in the denominator. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So it's 5 times 2 over 2. Let's keep going. Okay, that's going to give us 10 over 2, which is just 5. So we solved for x. X is 5. So that one just takes a little more work, but if you have the template, okay, if you know what to put here, the problems aren't that bad. Okay, so we'll just get more practice in class, and hopefully it'll be pretty easy for you. Well, I hope you have a totally awesome day. I'll see you in class.